Welcome back to this week's episode of the Lady Landlords podcast. This week, we have a very special member spotlight for you. So we have Kat, who is a realtor and a real estate investor from California, joining us today. So Kat, thank you so much for taking the time out to dedicate a conversation to the Lady Landlords community. How are you today?
Yeah. I'm good. Thanks for having me. Very good. Excited to be here.
Good. Thank you. What I would love to just always start with is just a little introduction from you to our members about who you are and how you kind of ended up in Lady Landlords.
Perfect. Yeah. My name's Kat, and I've been in real estate as an agent since 2014. I actually started in another state, but my family's from California, so we moved back here. And one of the things that I learned through real estate was how many people were buying and holding and keeping property. We were in the military, so that's very common with military, and it seems so complicated and something I'd never envisioned even as I entered real estate. That wasn't my goal. But I realized that people not only had them, but had future plans for them, right? Like this I was going to have for retirement. So slowly just started picking people's brains. And then I discovered people in my family had rentals.
That they were just hiding from you?
Yeah, it's like they don't want to talk about it. So once I moved back to California, I was talking to family and, we had 3 rental properties in that neighborhood. And it was like, what are you talking about? And then from there, briefly, I worked in a law firm that kind of had property management and things. And so I started just reaching out to different groups to pick brains and to learn. I felt like I was learning from the ground up. So Lady Landlords was one of the groups. And of course, I love anything that's women driven. I think we have a different approach, and that's not necessarily bad or wrong. But I like a group that's centered there to start with. Yeah. So that's how I found you guys.
And now what made you decide to be a real estate agent? Was that something that you were always kind of driven towards, or did that just kind of work out in happenstance?
I will say that I always had the entrepreneurial mindset and I really don't want to just punch a clock or, build somebody else's dream. But when it really became important was, again, when my husband was in the military. I quickly learned it was difficult for spouses to find jobs. As much as everybody wants to be supportive of the military and the spouses, it makes sense. When you move and you don't know when you're going to move or when that notice is going to come, it's hard to find a job. And I had a young child at the time, so I needed something flexible. So I really went into it like, this is something that has decent income and it's flexible. That's it. So everything else became a passion afterwards.
That's great that it really checked those boxes though, for what you needed at that time. And was something that then it sounds like then you could just pick up and say, okay, well, now we have to move to this area. Great. You still had your own job. Now you might have to just find a different brokerage to work under or transfer. But otherwise then you could still be working in the same career and it wasn't always having to find a new job every time those papers came through. Right.
And just that experience of the application process and interviewing and having people really question you, like, what is your commitment? Do you know when you're leaving again? So that helped a lot. And then all the other pieces fell into place, like as far as helping people and my personality type and the, I'm very compassionate and things like that and can maneuver stressful situations. All that was like, I didn't realize that was going to be as good of a fit as it was. Some people make real estate look like it's all power negotiation, and it's not. It really is a relationship business. So yeah,
it is. And it's also a problem solving business.
Yeah.
Right. It's very solution oriented. It's also just kind of managing expectations from your clients and things of that nature. So I'm glad you found success there. So then it sounds like you ended up back in California. you are still a real estate agent, and now all of a sudden this family of yours decided not to mention to you previously
Yeah.
about owning rentals. So what
Yeah.
made you decide, you know what, this is something that they're doing, I could do this too?
Yeah, it really came from me starting to really dive into passive income.
Mhm.
And again, real estate, even as someone who worked in real estate, it was not very high on my radar. But as an independent employee or worker, I'm not building a retirement. I don't have a pension, and like, people don't realize, especially in California, I don't know how it is in New York, but in California, almost everybody has disability through the state. Well,
Okay.
I've lived in 2 other states. They don't have disability. Like there's no safety net. People really take
Yeah.
it for advantage in California. They don't understand that a lot of states don't have these securities. And so I first started diving into passive income. And then as I was learning and I naturally share information with people, that's when I started learning my family. I had one family member specifically I knew had rentals. Um, but she was very heavy in real estate. So for me, I just thought, well, she must have just had the money to buy these things, like, and
Mhm.
a good deal must have fallen in her lap. And so as I'm researching investing in stock or opening retirements or other things to do, and I'd go, oh my God, I learned this. People would go, oh yeah, didn't you know? Oh yeah. Oh yeah, haven't you ever heard of that? Oh yeah, we had a property. And I just was like boggled by it. Like, you guys, you got to share this. We don't know these things. Yeah. So it took me learning first to even open those conversations, you know.
Gotcha. And it sounds like a lot of the learning you did was having conversations with other investors,
Yep.
other people that were there doing it, and then kind of
Right,
saying,
right,
hey, what strategy worked for you?
right.
What have you been working on? And that sounds like that was really what you used then to push forward within your own real estate investing journey. Is that
Right.
accurate?
Yep. Yeah. And it was kind of
Gotcha.
ding, ding, ding. I'm already in this industry, and there's this whole other like sphere of people that this is what they do. And so I really started diving in, like, started meeting other investors and forums, meetups, things like that. So just to learn as much as I could.
Okay. About how much time would you say you spent in that thinking, planning, learning phase? Like, were you kind of in that, let me learn more about this phase for like a month, and then we're like, hey, I'm jumping into this? Or were you kind of more of like, 2 years, 5 years, we're like just kind of tipping your toe in the world of real estate investing?
Unfortunately for us, I would say it was the 2 to 5 years phase. I
Gotcha.
wish I would have found you guys sooner, or you sooner.
Well, we didn't exist 5 years ago. So
I know, but it's like everything I learned today, like I wish I had had that tool,
yeah.
because even though I was learning, I still felt this is too big for me. I'm gonna have to save all this money. Like the
Yeah.
house hacking, all of the stuff I was learning, nobody was house hacking,
Gotcha.
and so they were still talking about going in with big down payments or hard money loans. I walked away from a lot because they felt scammy, you know. And so you didn't know who was telling you like a real means to an end, and who was just trying to get you to buy a product. And um so it took me a while of just observing and taking in the information before I started really going, okay, this is real, and I think we can get here quicker. And so right around the time
Okay.
you and I did our roadmap is when I was like, I probably had a couple months of going, there has to be a better way, before I dove into that. Yeah. So it took
Gotcha.
me a couple years to get there. But again, it's because I was like the blind leading the blind. I had no idea what I was doing. And I was, and this is someone who's in the industry, and it's
And
still,
I'm so happy you said that, because all because someone is a realtor does not mean that they can just easily translate into being a real estate investor. I'm
yeah.
sure that there are some things, and I did want to ask you about that. if there were some things that you do feel like made it easier for you as a realtor to be a real estate investor. But once again, it is not the same thing. Not every single skill is transferable. So I'm actually really happy to hear you say that, yes, even as a realtor, I needed help learning how to be a real estate investor.
Yeah.
So
I think the major benefit that being a realtor helped me with was the networking. Once I started reaching out, there were people there to reach out to. But it took a long time because, of course, my average buyer or seller is somewhere in the first time home buyer realm, or maybe this is their first time selling a house, still fairly young, and investing is not on their radar. So I just kind of had to be in the industry long enough and bump into enough people and say like, hey, I know you. So the networking is probably the number one thing that being an agent helped me with.
Gotcha. And then before we started working together and did that roadmap program together, you had already kind of gotten your feet wet with some investments, correct?
Yeah.
Do you want to say a little bit about what you were working on at that time?
Yeah, we did. Right at the beginning of COVID, we did a flip. I had a business partner and we did a flip, and we bought it. We were so excited. It was a huge house. I mean, it's straight out of the 70s. Like I mean, green carpet, the whole deal.
Wow.
But then COVID hit. And so it was literally nothing we had planned was going the way we envisioned. And we got through that. We survived. The house turned out great and we were able to resell it. But
that was out of state, correct?
This one was here in California.
That was in California. Okay.
Yep. So, but we survived that and decided maybe we'll do a purchase out of state with a much lower buy-in, and our goal is to hold it. And so that's our property in Michigan. And same thing, we're very optimistic and just dove in, head first. And I still kind of just blame things on COVID, but we really could not find reputable vendors to help us. We had a contractor out there that just kind of disappeared. And so the home is still vacant. It's now 100% mine. We made a business decision to just go separate. And so I'm still just trying to get that one back on its feet. But again, like hard lessons straight out of the gate, hard lessons. I'm happy to learn them now,
Yes.
Like, yeah, I learned real quick what we can handle. And there was some freedom and leeway with our mistakes again because of COVID, but it's hard to say for sure if those would have happened, so.
Right.
Yeah. But it's,
I think contractors disappearing happened pre-pandemic too. But so I want to talk about this first property that you had. So yes, you went in with a business partner. Did you have any type of agreement? Was it written up by an attorney? Just in case some of our listeners out there have been thinking about a partnership.
Technically on the house flip, we did not.
Okay.
We had just more of like a friendship type thing. We did agree on the numbers. There was 3 of us. But yeah, we went in blindly and just, so mistake number 1, right? Because I think we did learn some hard lessons about who was expected to do how much work. And laying out expectations of the parties involved. And I think that could have been done better on everybody's part. So definitely I would recommend that after our experience.
Sure. So making sure that everybody knows what their role is. And sometimes people need to be a silent partner.
Yeah.
And that should be their role, is not really speaking. But it is important then in those partnerships to make sure we know who's going to be doing what, who's responsible for things, what is a group decision, what is one person's decision. So it sounds like just having that little delineation between responsibilities of people, it sounds like that would have been some that you would have liked in that first deal.
Yeah.
Any other learning lessons that you had from the first deal with the partnership?
That really summarizes a lot of it. It's just having a clear idea of the goal. We realized quickly our expectations were very different. And then also just our expectations of completing the deal. Like once we were on the market, realizing, you know, part of my role was as a realtor. And so when all was said and done, I put on my agent hat. And, you know, even maybe that wasn't the best decision. Like someone who wasn't involved with the project might have been better, you know, to keep things separate. I feel like I did a good job, but I could see where, you know, maybe someone not involved would have been a better person for that role.
That's interesting to then say, since you were so in it and it was your project, and then you also were trying to meet the expectations of your partner, that probably was a lot of pressure on you and you alone at that point in time.
Yeah. And explaining, you know, explaining the rules and explaining how to behave. And then also negotiating with the other side when they also knew I was one of the partners. And, you know, it was a bit dicey. Overall, it was a good transaction, but I mean, you know, I think it could have been more smooth in the end.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it sounds like also the flip itself was successful. You were able to find the contractors, get the work done, and get the place sold, right?
Well, that was one of the things we disagreed on. Is I would have preferred to have more contractors, whereas my partner wanted to do more hands-on on their own to save money. That was one of the big conflicts. So for the times that we were able to do contractors and use them, yes, we found them. But again, we were local, right? So that's a whole nother beat when we're trying to do it out of state. Like we were able to call people we had worked with in the past and things like that.
Okay. Good. But it sounds like then you were able to get through that one.
Sold
yes,
it.
with bumps, but it sounds like there were more bumps with the partnership than the actual flip.
Exactly. Yeah. The only thing I would say, like, especially for our first project, it was really a big house. It was over 2,000 square feet. Again, it was still from the 70s. It was a 2-story. So for our very first one, that was probably, you know, at least for me, too big of a project. You know, but at the time the market was still hot. There's a reason why other people skipped that house. Then we were like, sweet, we finally got one, you know, because it was very hard to get like your standard 1,000 to maybe 1,200 square foot house. Those were off ASAP. You know? Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. But and how did you find that property?
That one was me through the MLS. Yeah, and it was actually like a trustee sale, so not a probate. The person had died, but their home was in a trust. And so then the people selling it were, you know, an executor. They were very disconnected. They, you know, didn't care about anything. So yeah, so that part went smooth, but through the MLS.
Okay, thank you. So then let's move now to the second one. You're in California, your business partner's in California. How did you pick Michigan?
I had started playing around and looking, and I had really fallen in love with a community in Michigan called Lansing. And I've told some people about that and they go, oh yeah, we know Lansing. Like, I don't know. But I was having the darndest time getting a hold of an agent or anybody that would just call me back. I was finding houses in Lansing. Like, I want to buy this today. Like, here, take my money, please. And no one would call me. Like, nobody would call me back. Yeah, I went like through Zillow and things. And then I also went direct to agent websites. I called them. And it's easy to say, like, you don't know, especially as an agent, I don't know who to trust when people are calling me like that, cold calling. And especially hearing, oh, I'm from California and I'm an investor. They're probably like, yeah, right. So just no one would call me back. So I finally went through the channels of asking for a referral from another agent that, their brokerage was in multiple states,
Okay.
and finding an agent and going that route.
Okay.
So yeah, we had
So,
to kind of.
so then it was so then through that connection, you were able to find that realtor. And then that realtor helped you find them this property in Lansing.
This ended up in Detroit. So in the end,
Okay.
I was not in Lansing. Yeah.
Okay.
I know.
So how did that?
And I'm still in love with Lansing.
Well, now at least you have a realtor. And I hope that if we have any realtors from Lansing listening to this episode, that they reach out to Kat and say, hey, I'm a realtor. I will call you back. I will help you with this. So there you go. Hopefully that gives somebody a lead that's listening to this. So how then were you looking at Lansing, but then ended up finding a place in Detroit?
This particular agent did work in Lansing, but her primary area was Detroit. Oh. And so just the areas, well, in the very end, the property that we ended up purchasing was like her listing. Like she just happened to have one that was vacant, was ready to go. And it was a duplex, which is really what we were looking for. And so we kind of thought we were removing a headache. Like, let's not worry about driving everywhere. Here's a place where she's already familiar with the property. Let's, take into this one, which it really is a beautiful home. Like I'm really partial to it. I love it. It's 2-story brick, so we felt like, oh, good, let's just do this. Like it fell into our lap. Yeah.
Okay. And it still sounds like that. It sounds like then from what you had said earlier, this is where that partnership, then we decided to kind of dissolve that. And now this is just yours. So we don't have those same kind of issues that you had previously with this house, but with the previous property. But it sounds like now, on the other hand, now you don't have the partnership problems, but now you have the actual flip problems. That was the reverse of the first property, right?
Yep. So I finally connected with a property management company in Detroit that I originally was pitching to just sell the property. I wanted to be done with it. And this person contacted me that's familiar with the area. They even manage property on my street. So they knew exactly, what house. And so right now we're taking it slow. I technically have an agreement with them, but right now it's getting it off the ground. They have contractors, they have a team. Like the day after we talked, I was able to get my locks changed. And it was like, oh, thank God. Because I didn't know who who was doing what. So we're going to get it rehabbed. And then we'll decide if I'm going to keep it and just move forward with this, or if we are going to sell it.
Okay, perfect. So then when you and I connected, and we had known each other from the Facebook group, Lady Landlords, for a while, but then you had reached out to me a couple months ago when we were still kind of not sure what was going on with that property number 2.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about what your mindset was when then you were like, oh my God, I need help. I need to email Becky. What got you to that point?
I have been on this pathway for quite some time of just improving health, improving life, and was coming out of, a place of unhappiness and going, this is not what I wanted, whoa, what just happened? Like 5 years had flown by. And so this moment of kind of, let me scatter all my pieces and start plucking where I need to go. And I knew at that point, after, even with all the trouble I had with both of those properties, I still knew real estate was where I wanted to be. And I had made the decision. I hadn't quit my job yet, huh?
No, you hadn't.
Yeah. So I knew I needed to really give 100% finally to something. And that's been something my whole life. I've been a let me pile my plate too high type person. And
Mhm.
I knew I needed to go 1000% somewhere, and I knew I wanted it in real estate. And so I just
Yeah.
kind of went to the only person I knew that had done that, that was like just going for it. And I felt you and I started similar, like you didn't really know what you were getting into when you started,
No,
you
I
know?
did not.
Yeah. So I felt like that was, you weren't coming to me like, well, my family's been in construction for 2 generations. It was like,
No.
no, I was a young person, bought a house, and this opened up doors for me. And I went, that's the person I want to follow. I don't want someone like tricking me and being like, well, first you need to go, borrow $1 million. So yeah. So
Exactly.
that was it. It was just, you were kind of the one person I knew that had done it from scratch or from the beginning and had been
Yeah.
successful.
Aw, thank
Yeah.
you. Actually, I wish I'd asked you that question sooner because that really, thank you. That like really makes me feel good. I'm glad that you saw something in me that said like, well, if she could do it, I could do it too. Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm glad you recognize that within yourself, that this was something that you could do and is something that
Yeah.
you can be successful at. So
Yeah.
that makes me
Yeah.
really happy that you had that feeling too. So then you reached out. We ended up doing the Lady Landlords Roadmap Program, which is a 3-hour workshop going through a ton
Yeah.
of details and everything in your life. So that way we can kind of help create like a plan for you. So
Yeah.
after we did that roadmap, how did you feel?
Like, so for the listeners, because we're on different time zones,
Yes.
you know, you were up and like working, like you were in a normal day. Well, for me, it was like 6 in the morning. I had rolled out of
Yeah.
bed with coffee. My house was quiet. So after we were already in for a couple hours, my husband had woken up, things like that. So I could tell he kind of listened a little bit. And when we were finally done, excuse me, I just kind of walked out and was like, babe, we can do this,
I
and
love
yeah.
that.
And so that was it. Like the energy I had that morning was not like I just watched, Zig Ziglar and was like, yeah, I'm all fired up. It was like, holy cow, this is real.
Yeah.
And I have our plan, and we can really do this. And so and because he was able to hear some of it, I knew I didn't have to convince him as much. So no, he's been in it too. Real estate really is kind of family business. Because it's these crazy hours, it has to be.
Hmm.
So, he's shown property with me, he's hung up my signs, things like that. So contextually, he understands the language that we're using. And so he was able to grasp what we were talking about and understood like the plans that we were discussing. And, of course, he knows all about our finances. So it's like he understood that this wasn't just some motivational talk that I was in, that, I was really doing some work and making a plan. And he's been
Yeah.
on board, since that day.
That makes me really happy to hear because
Yeah.
it is with our partners. And trust me, my husband, if he was listening to this, he would be just kind of shaking his head laughing because I am the one that comes up with like the crazy idea to do this or the crazy
Yeah.
idea to do that. Right. And then he's kind of the ground that's
Yep.
kind of like, no, 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 that's not how that's going to work. Or like, I don't think that's a thing, Becky. Like we
Yeah.
shouldn't, maybe we shouldn't really do that.
Yeah.
So like I definitely know, and after you've been together for a couple of years, I do feel like every time I kind of go to him with something, I get a little bit more skepticism than I did the last time that something didn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it makes me really happy to hear that he felt confident that this was a plan that you could put in action.
Right.
And I'm also glad that you found it to be actionable items because that to me is what's really important. I am
Right.
not the Tony Robbins, okay,
Right.
let's go, let's walk on
Yeah.
fire when you're sitting there being like, but I just need to know if I should do a cash out refinance or a HELOC. And
Right.
I'm like, no, walk across the embers.
Yeah.
That's
You can
not
do what you
me.
want. Yeah.
Exactly. For me, it's very important to say what's going on in your specific situation. How do we get
Right.
you unstuck? Right? Like
Right.
your plan is completely different than everybody else's roadmap would be, because your financial
Right.
situation is different. Your goals are different. What we're working with and what you want to actually do is completely different. And that's why you have to have those focus steps, rather than me just being like, your cheerleader in the corner, which I can still do. But if I don't help direct you into where to go, you're going to be in the same place. So
Right.
I'm really happy to hear that not only did we then get you a plan that you felt like, yes, I can do this, but then also that helped bring your husband on board,
Right.
which just saves everybody some time, argument, and headspace
Right.
when our partners are kind of on board with us.
Yeah.
So,
And it makes a difference. It really does. Like to have that support, and
yeah.
to know moving forward that we're still on the same path. Like our goals are the same. We're not working on two different projects. Like, we're still focused, and that's good. That means a lot to me, that he's supportive, even if I am popping off and saying crazy things, coming up with wild ideas. He will help me hone them. Yeah.
And that's actually, I can speak similar to that in my relationship, that yes, it is helpful to then have that partner that can kind of balance you out. And I tell this story like all the time, but one of the best pieces of relationship advice I ever got, this will be a shout out to one of my childhood friends, Stephanie. She told me one day, and this was right actually before I started dating my husband. She was like, everybody in a relationship, you need to be on one side or the other, meaning you're either going to be the kite, the dreamer, the person that's always kind of pushing the things forward, that's the risk taker, right? The person that's always just kind of that big picture thinker. But the kite's going to fly away if you don't have the person on the ground.
Yep.
And the person on the ground, yes, they're going to be a little more risk averse. They're going to be the safety person, but they really balance each other out. I am then able to kind of pull my husband along and push him forward in some of the other goals that he wants to reach, but kind of isn't sure or how to take that leap. But then he makes sure I don't fly away
Right.
and do all these crazy things. So it sounds like you and your husband actually have a similar balance to that. And honestly, it's like I said, it's been some of the best relationship I got, at 3:00 in the morning at a bar in New York City. But
you're a kite, Becky.
I'm a kite. I am definitely a kite. And it sounds like you are too, Kat.
Yeah,
So,
I like that.
Yeah. So but it is nice when we kind of have partners, and then once again, you can kind of balance that thing out. And once again, it doesn't even have to be a romantic relationship. That could still be a business partner. You still kind of need to think about it in that way of who's kind of the dreamer and then who's the ground in those situations. So I'm glad you found that. So then, since we did that roadmap a few months ago, what's kind of happened since?
Well, I took the leap. So at the time, I was a full-time paralegal, but I was still doing real estate, but most of my business came directly from the law firm. So I wasn't out getting my own business, and I maybe only had a transaction here and there, and it was somehow intertwined with the law firm. So, maybe someone had a probate or something, they needed a property sold. So I left that job altogether, and that was wonderful. I know I mentioned my oldest child a while ago. She was about this age, about 5 years old when I went into real estate, and my son is now that age. And so I was able to leave my job and then right away dove into like soccer camp and, got to spend a couple weeks with them just being a parent as I transitioned into full-time realtor. And then, you and I had set a goal that I kind of be in my foundation with my new brokerage by October, which that worked just fine. I love my new brokerage. I'm extremely happy. I've got several escrows. Yeah. And then the next phase was working towards the property that my husband and I are going to start working on, for ourselves and our retirement. So that's where we're heading towards now. And we have some money set aside, and then we're working with like an asset lender. So we can work on maybe not having to have as much. And then we're just trying to decide, do we want to stay in California as far as those properties? Or do we want to look at other states, so that just that's not in stone yet. Like right now, I'm really trying to learn how to analyze the deals. I would really love to be in a duplex or more situation. And so that's where we're at right now, getting that going.
So it's interesting that you're possibly considering going back to the house hacking concept.
Yeah, I love it. Like I mean, I think it was even you that explained it to me that I did banking for a long time. So compound interest is like this basic thing, and I can still remember teaching people about compound interest and having it blow their mind. And when you started explaining house hacking, and we broke down how the multiple units each year, they might increase a little bit in their rents. And essentially that was compound interest. It was like my brain exploded. So I was like, what? So I can't let go of that. Like I will not, yeah, my goal is like apartment buildings or something. Like I cannot let go of multiple units. And my goal in life is to help people and have affordable housing, and so to me, it just seems so empowering to just be able to help as many as I can while also, securing my own future and my children's future and things like that. I don't know, it's like spinning in the rain. Like, oh my God, I can help so many people. It's so good.
And I remember the end of that roadmap session where that light bulb definitely went off over your head when we started kind of talking about how all these units kind of compound on top of each other and kind of continue to bring in the cash flow that you wanted to see.
Right.
And also it seemed like a more doable plan. Yep. I felt like for you, when we first started talking, it was very much like, this is going to be a ton of work. This is going to take a ton of time, a ton of money that I have to have saved to be able to get involved in this. And we kind of broke it down, and we kind of went through what compound house hacking would be, and really kind of just like lit that light bulb over your head. Yeah. And then I remember you saying that this is a great way for me to be able to help more people. Right.
Yeah.
And that is what we do as landlords, is provide safe and comfortable properties for people to live in and be their homes. Right. So I thought it was really great that you had such a cool mission within this, which was to see how many other families that you can help have their homes.
Right. Yeah, it was really, there's not very often in life where I have aha moments. I really have to dig in. And when people are like, what's your aha moment? I'm like, oh God, here we go again. But that was like one of those times where I just went, oh my God, my whole world is rocked. And that really did motivate. Like I said, when I walked out, like, babe, we can do this. Like, that was it. Like, I think that was probably the moment where it became really, really real and obtainable, where it was like, I could feel it. So I was like, okay, I'm good. I made the right decision. I'm on the right path. Yeah.
I so wish now that I had recorded like the very end of that call, because I still remember like your face. I remember your face when you were like, wait, that's how I can do this? That's it?
Yeah.
It's that simple. Like when it was broken down, like I remember how excited you were when that like kind of clicked. Yeah. And I wish though that I had recorded it so I could show it back to you. But either way, the most important thing is we kind of got to that point. So I am so happy that you were able to take the information from that roadmap, get unstuck, figure out what you were doing moving forward. And it sounds like you just have some great plans of what the very end of 2021 is going to look like. And then it's going to be a fantastic 2022 for you. So I am very excited about that. Do you have any comments or statements of words of encouragement for our listeners out there that are going to find your story relatable and feel that they are in a position of being stuck and not knowing where to go?
Yeah, I think the number one takeaway, even for me, like when it comes to advice, is obviously dig in, continue to learn, but networking is number one. At some point you're gonna need people in your corner, whoever they are. But then also it really is not that complicated. It's not that it's a secret. I joke, nobody wants to talk about it. It's this big secret, but the reality is it's out there. There's people doing it, and we have to be in control of ourselves. Like we have to. And so this is a wonderful tool to help yourself, help others, and yeah, I don't want to blabber too long, but it's, it's just, it's not that scary. Once you have the tools, it's not scary and it's doable, so.
I agree. And if I can do it and you can do it, every single
Yeah.
one of our listeners out there can do it. So
Right.
I think that's a great reminder, Kat, that yes, we have to be able to get that foundational help and support to know to know how to use those tools. And then really we have the information we need to be able to move forward. So I think that's a great reminder for people that this is something they can do. So Kat, thank you so much for being on our episode today. I really appreciate you taking the time out.
Yeah, thank you.
So for any of our listeners, if you happen to be in the Sacramento area and would like to chat real estate with Kat or use her for your property searches out there, I will make sure to put her contact information down in the show notes. I will also put the information if you are interested in getting your own personalized real estate investment roadmap, just like Kat did with me a few months ago. I will put the link down there so you can also see that. Lastly, if you have not, please make sure to click subscribe if you're watching us either on our YouTube channel or on our podcast so you do not miss our episodes that come out weekly on Tuesdays. Thank you very much for joining us again on this episode of the Lady Landlords Podcast.